Hello there. Welcome to On Corruption. On Corruption by me, Ian F. Dunn. I am the Manchurian Candidate. You might know me from silly satire platform, the Manchurian Candidate. You might know me as Ian F. Dunn, door-knocking, sort of irritating politician on your doorstep. Maybe that's why I've ended up here on YouTube. Thank you. This is a kind of an anti-corruption type of politics. I'm putting forward a new way to tackle the stinking, rotten, awful, deep, dark, bottom of the ocean corruption that we have. Isn't the politics so corrupt at the moment? You know, we've got real bad faith power, haven't we? Bad faith power, toxic power, the ring of power, rather like a Tolkien book, perhaps. You know, Sauron is in charge, Skynet is in charge, Weyland-Yutani are in charge, all these cool sort of OCP type of corporation baddies are in charge. How do we deal with it? Well, I would like Epoch Nova to be the kind of bigger boat, if you like. This is a bigger boat constitutionally than what we have going on so far. In a way, it's looking at constitutionalism from the other way up and saying, right, we need to have a candidate, clean candidates, who are sworn up on a certain set of values. And I guess on corruption, as well as everything I do, is a little bit of prose, to be honest. It is a little bit of an art thing, rather than being as lockdownable, as specific as one would hope. There are benefits to being like that. However, Epoch Nova itself has more rules and stuff in it, more kind of, this is how it should be. This is how a candidate should conduct themselves, generally speaking. Candidates should have certain values, I think, in order to do the job. Being post-faith, for example, being a critical one. Ooh, these crabs are a bit out of control, aren't they? Sorry, forgive me for that animation. It's been a bit, I'm just going to leave it there now. Obviously, I'm narrating it now, so it doesn't matter. A society can be directed into the deep end. Oh, yeah, that's where we're going. Don't you think we're in the deep, dark bottom of the pile now, aren't we? We've got the losers of the losers and the brats of the brats, and the most toxic people are in charge of our economies and our countries. We need to change that, you know. I think people are persuaded by the dark side somewhat, you know. People become toxically inclined due to societal collapse, economic collapse, and so on. Our leaders are failing by accident to steer away from shining lighthouse warnings easily visible to ourselves. Listen, how come I can see that coming but you can't? I mean, what's going on? It looks like they're doing it on purpose, doesn't it? What if they are doing it on purpose? Well, we would call that lie hop. What if corruption, you know, certain corruption is like disaster capitalism, so it seems to happen on purpose, doesn't it? Like, oops, daisy, I've made a ton of money. People don't generally make a ton of money by accident, would be my assessment. I think that people don't make tons of money through premeditated plans and having it all be an oopsie daisy. So that would be letting it happen on purpose. Bourgeois fancy pants people, of course, are typical. Good old Marx did tell us about this. Is that, look, the bourgeois people, the fancy people, will not see doom coming. They will drive us right off a cliff, won't they? And we need to stop that. So Epoch Nova is about saying, no. Oh, let's try and get some good candidates on board, right? Anti-corruption methods aimed at ensuring our politicians they can no longer whoopsie-daisy their way through our businesses, our homes, our land, and our humanity, basically, the natural world, everything. We have a kind of golden childish phenomenon, you know, and I hate this phrase, the broadest shoulders. Oh, the broadest shoulders. Listen, if anyone had broad shoulders in the upper kind of political classes, we would not be having the kind of problems that we have now. Great little reference to Fight Club there, by the way. That's quite cool, isn't it? Things you end up owning you, don't they? 1999. I say this, we're going to need a bigger boat because we're after superior predators, right? Killing with intent, no remorse for the pain caused by political fraud. Political fraud, I'm a sort of satirist, as you know, but political fraud, political crimes, political deceit, political skullduggery and whatnot ruins lives. It takes lives. We can see what's happening in Palestine now. Captains who are not loyal to the crew. Where is the humanity? Where is the kindness? We need better politics than this grubby, awful, corrupt politics. We see the failure of those with power beyond belief to match power with responsibility. And it's just failure. Old-fashioned corruption lies behind our global political strife. It does. It's like a kind of mafia world, isn't it? I fancy myself rather an Elliot Ness type inspired guy. Kind of a what Mr. Trump falsely advertised as being. But to legitimately be that, someone who will clean up a swamp. Personally, I think a swamp would be an upgrade on where we are right now. The level of white-collar crime, elite crime, is just completely out of control. So what have we got here? This is a form of voluntary self-regulation of candidates, right? So me, the candidate, I swear the oath, take an oath in the community. Kind of think of it like a romantic way of taking vows. You know, when we get married, we write our own vows nowadays, don't we? This is a lovely thing. I think the same of candidates. I think that candidates should write vows but to the whole community. Wouldn't that be interesting? Why? Because we love our community. We ought to be people who do genuinely love our country, love our community, who we are. Not in a toxic kind of patriotic, violent way, but just in a loving, adoring, I want to be your kind of manager, dude. I'll be there for you when you need it. Like, crisis person. People who deal with problems in society. People who actually do something good. Leadership, all right? The public must be able to put their vote in a candidate with stated objectives and a secure relationship and be able to bank on that relationship being straightforward and honourable and whatnot. Just good old-fashioned trust, I would call it, right? We're so very sick of not having any trust whatsoever in politics. Try to bring trust back to politics would be good, wouldn't it? All those with a mortal body alive in this world are mutually dependent on some level. I like to be quite deep philosophical sometimes. This thing I put together is a kind of preface for Epoch Nova, the Constitution. This is like what I was writing for ages while I was alone in the darkness in a very unconstitutional situation, which we'll discuss another time. I would like to have power. I'm after power. So if you want to vote me in and give me power, you want to be able to know what I'm going to do and how I'm going to respond to, right? At the moment, our party politicians, they respond to a party. I would like to change all that, and that's what Epoch Nova is really all about. Unified in peace and prosperity, we must become for life. Unified behind the goal of living, surviving, which requires love and togetherness, community and society, being features in many other complex species. Meanwhile, Mr. Jordan Peterson thinks we're lobsters. We're not lobsters, okay? Lobsters don't have weddings, funerals, or public services, or taking lobster poop, lobster trash away, lobster grandmothers and granddads. There's none of that at all. We are moving from ambivalence to certainty via teaching and debating. When we reach certainty enough to act, we act. Politics is not like this at all. Muddy waters and non-conformism from big babies playing Game of Thrones who do not think on any level of the pride of the statehood, the dignity of leadership, and lost in these democracy where short-term financial fuckery dominate the slight shifts of a contemptful nation. Tell you, this is some fantastical writing. Not all of it makes a great deal of sense. Forgive me, I call what I do a kind of political jazz. It's like a lot of, often it's some kind of ranting and raving and all the rest of it. And often it just comes out like that. I'm not really going to correct it too much because this is just who I am. Epoch Nova is seeking to make politics a reputable trade, fundamentally, right? At the moment, politics is an absolute bait-and-switch hustle, It's an attractive career to the best of us. Well, I'd like it to be that anyway, and I'd like there to be meaningful deterrent on corruption. As we say, the political fraud, this idea of political fraud, getting us to a point where real anti-corruption politics takes hold, and we have non-corrupt politics. Why? Because we need it. You notice that we're going to survive if we don't get that. Prosecuting politics, oh God, yeah. Let's start by taking a moment to quietly reflect on all the lives lost to political failure and the ignorance of politicians. The resolve behind these documents for a new age are of love and conservation of what is good in the world. It is all going to perish. We're going to lose everything. The whole natural world, everything we have, everything we ever were, everything we ever could be, it's all hanging in the balance right now. And we must be able to vote knowing that those that we put into place to be leaders, they're going to be accountable, they can't tell us lies, they're going to do the best job that they can, and at the end of it all, yes, little mention of swordfall. Swordfall wasn't something I think I had really put together quite firmly when I wrote this thing. This is like a 2023 document, and I thought I would just put it up there. It was to lead with consensus and forever put the democratic will of the people first. Yeah, so Epoch Nova has a key principle in it, which guarantees democratic rule, right? A representative is literally just a representative. Don't get to interfere with democracy. The vow of reason, there's always a reason, it's going to send you back a letter from America which guarantees that the candidate shall uphold the First Amendment of the Constitution of the USA. Why? Get the First Amendment of the Constitution of the USA pretty much in there. People will kind of know what that is. On a kind of international level, makes this document more sellable, if you like, to the mainstream political thought market. A declaration of sovereignty. Here we declare and bow with respect to the power and the glory of the monarchy and the king and his ancestors and descendants. While democracy approves of the status quo, Epoch Nova shall support that in every way. Look, I am not a monarchist myself. I don't really believe in monarchy. I'm sort of probably on the side of getting rid of it, if I'm honest, or reforming it. And you'll see that at this stage I hadn't really put forward what I would do there, wanting just to make sure this isn't an act of sedition from day one, wanting to make sure that we're not just offending everybody, wanting to make sure there's space for ambiguity, if you like, about locking down the substance of politics. It's just really about getting the conduct of candidates to line up with what people want, right? And so the candidate must describe what is the most holy spiritual power they answer to, privately, inwardly, without disclosing that to the public. So we have a public command in Epoch Nova democracy who is not compromisable with ease via their God or church or faith. So with this one, that's really all about trying to make sure that the people's word becomes God. Rich men can no easier evade the eye of a needle than evade Epoch Nova on the road to glory. Politicians abuse their positions for financial gain. Do you think that? Do you think that? I think that they do. I think they do. Why it attracts so much corruption? Newsflash. These New Age candidates shall take government salary only, I've changed that as well since then, and be employed by no other third party at all. So, little note on that, again, it's funny about being a constitutionalist. You go, oh, yes, well, that was going to work back then, but I don't think that's going to work now. Actually, I've got a better idea. Better idea is have a self-funded candidate, a community candidate, don't even take the salary, because I suddenly realised this salary is a bit dodgy, isn't it? Because then you're going to be tempted to just keep topping that up all the time, and you're going to want to stay in your job, and you're not going to want to do what's right for the people. I don't think that's legit anymore, you know? So on the money side of things, the candidate is in Epoch Nova now, where we are in 2025, community self-funded only. Even only the salary, no, don't take that anymore. That will be delivered to the community and spent in the community, right? The Epoch Nova contract makes it so that any clandestine or non-disclosed earnings that are found shall be acts of political fraud. Yeah, so in other words, if we can find any kind of dodgy money, non-disclosed money really, it could well just haul you in for a swordfall process. Remember, the swordfall process is still a process. Like, so you get the kind of, to be fair, it's like, oh, it's the public, anybody can spot breaches of contract here and go, hey, hang on a minute, you're taking money from such and such, and that's not right. Oh, yes, absolutely, you're correct, and getting hauled out for that. So the reason I've got that donation cap, $49, below 50 quid, nothing actually counts as a political donation, even under 50 quid is what I found out. So, loophole. It's basically with that, keep things under 50 quid and you've got yourself a legit Bernie Sanders style platform. That's what I'm after, really. An independent that cannot be sort of persuaded or, bribed, basically. We're talking about bribery, aren't we? We're talking about bribery. A total ban on cronyism and scapegoating or mafia-style activities are not possible without removing enablers and henchmen, sole corruptors, fairly useless, etc. So it's about making sure you don't have any mates, dodgy mates, you know. Swordfall is a vote of no confidence. Yeah, fundamentally, swordfall itself, you've got the swordfish in front of you now. If you've got the swordfish in front of you, then I'm timing reasonably well. My narration, forgive me. Swordfall is the peer review procedure. So in other words, people that vote for me, support me from the community, if they go, hey, this isn't good enough, they get to haul me in. See, at the moment, saw an interesting interaction with an American politician, ends in the word Mace, Nancy Mace, I think her name is, hasn't done any town halls or anything, hasn't turned up anywhere for a long, long time. That can't happen in the new age, you know what I mean? Moving on to this thing with the ego death penalty. The ego death penalty we'll revisit another time, but ego death penalty is a kind of a new punishment. I want to bring forth a new way to rehabilitate people. It's a non-violent therapeutic way of dealing with quite bad crimes or even quite modest crimes that could save the community a lot of money. Prisons, the whole infrastructure of imprisonment, particularly old mass incarceration and whatnot, I'd like to see that all be abolished in the spirit of abolition. What have we got here? So personal growth, tough love, disciplining that was not done in childhood, done in public is very effective. Yes, so teaching a human brain right from wrong. Abuse must take place in isolation. This is why abusers get their targets firmly in shadow. Ego death penalties are public, non-violent confrontations. In other words, getting victims a chance to really confront abusers and baddies basically up front in a way that could be rehabilitative for them, maybe even redeeming for baddies in a way. So this is to do with who we have that are our biggest baddies, guys, to understand people that are in power causing immense harm from where they are in power. The swordfall process, this is politically speaking, of course, swordfall, ego death penalties, these kind of things, it's new ways, it's new forms of justice, new kind of ways of utilizing society, community, democracy to focus democratic power for the good and focus democratic power to challenge toxic power, corporate power, baddie power, basically. With regards to libel, gag order, corporate NDA type of manner sworn by law, swordfall only ends in the satisfaction of the challenger and the peers involved that no fraud has been committed. So yeah, basically a bit about the swordfall there, thinking about SCOTUS and whatnot. King level immunity for leaders. That's why I've compared it to the Magna Carta. I'd like to say, oh, this is as cool as a Magna Carta, as big as a shift as Magna Carta. One would only hope that we could do something more effective and more successful than that. And just on that level, universally, the concept of community, tribe, survival of all of us. We should be well together like a big family. Society always under attack. but never defeated. The people, our people, have endured. That's how we all got here. It is this notion of continuity and lasting cultural memory. Interesting. So, meanwhile, perjury, right? So, perjury is triable only on indictment. The indictment process here is started by constituents, an agreed number of referrals. This would then be heard at a certain court. Yes, in other words, looking at ways to make sure that swordfall thing works, because it's kind of like perjury. So, making political fraud a bit like perjury. That's the level of crime. Epoch Nova, generation of politicians who adopt the strategy shall benefit from a reputation unlike any other politicians. A new age politician is a brand new thing to understand. It's not like an old age politician will be one that worked the way they used to. New age of peace is only possible with leaders of universal tolerance in their hearts and minds. We have to have anti-war leaders. We have to have pro-peace leaders. Most humans do not kill. Most humans do not steal. Most humans will help another stranger. Most humans seek love, commitment, and stability, and so God's wishes, and well, most commonly already seems to line up nicely with the desires of most people. The majority are good. There is goodness in all of us, isn't there? So it could be a way, I think, to kind of combine, in the way that in America people say, what kind of constitution do you have? What kind of country are you? They say Christian. We're a Christian country. Well, actually, you're kind of you're actually a secularist country, actually, and there's this confusion, isn't there, because there's some mention of God and whatnot. Well, what is God in Epoch Nova? God in Epoch Nova is simply what the people think in a majority, what the majority of people think very strongly. For example, there should be healthy retirements, there should be a welfare state of some sort, there should be a safety net, you should help the sick, you shouldn't do murder, you shouldn't do, there are things, you shouldn't do stealing and thieving, and what our current politicians do. There is morality without holy books, and that can be Epoch Nova in politics, you see. Surrender to peace only, for peace itself shall have no glory or shame. We all share in the victory of peace and avoid the failure that is national conflict around families and children. Don't bring your warfare into politics anymore. Have an anti-war politics. War for profit and resource must be identified as utterly redundant and folly. The battle for liberty is better fought with words than guns and bombs and so on. This is an anti-war. Epoch Nova, new politicians must be against national warfare for us to abolish national warfare. Surrendering some of the privileges of being a private citizen must be accepted reality. Politicians hold voters to a higher standard than their collaborators. This cannot be the case. In other words, what I'm saying is that political candidates of a corporate nature, are so toxic and unreliable. They're just so disinterested. We have a higher standard of citizen than we do of politician, if you know what I mean. The phrase "when conducting government business" refers to universally to any discussion taking place between a voter and the candidate, with whom one should see as akin to a lawyer who is on your side in matters of state. The candidate has no right to privacy when conducting government business. Just straight up. Why on earth are they able to tell lies to us about anything that's happening in government? The phrase Epoch Nova does mean new age, and it's all very new agey. Think hippies and flower power and such, a time for tripping out, pill form contraception. Woohoo, that's the mood for this material, both hyper-liberal and yet hyper-conservative at the same time. Paradoxical, pragmatist, I would say. New management is needed for the greatest era of humankind to commence. Now is time for adaptation to survive, unlike anything Charles Darwin dreamt of. It's not an arc, it's just a way forward, yeah? Corporate rights shall never be equal to human or animal life. No. Not by the buying and selling of assets shall corporations acquire power or influence over the business of government. It transcends the powers of those described herein of any living person. We have a problem with corporate power out of control, don't we? Sentient beings, which are not human, they also have a place on Earth, right? And ought to be treated humanely, yes. So why can we not look after animals and stuff and bugs and stuff before we're looking after goddamn AI and Skynet and whatnot? Animals have senses, emotions, and behave with intent. Self-aware cognitive skills, and many complex mammals of machines start to demonstrate these attributes or respond in such a way. It's very similar to consciousness and suffering. It's like things. So basically, what I'm talking about here is how can we decide what's alive? Are the computers alive? Is technology alive? Complicated questions. However, life takes priority over technology and money and such. Pragmatic populism, a form of hybrid representation in New Age democracy. Pragmatic populism is exactly what I would call Epoch Nova. Fundamentally, what's Epoch Nova? Well, it's pragmatic populism. It's kind of a bit of populism and still a bit of representative democracy. Still a bit of representative democracy, but generally speaking, populism becoming much more of a feature of politics as getting things that are popular because it's good for everybody type things are popular. That should be happening, shouldn't it? Why is anyone against populism? Don't know. Very, very dodgy. People's democratic imperative, right? So this is what I call this concept where you're going to get a more guarantor situation, whereas in, okay, what's happening, what vote is coming through the House of Parliament or Scottish Parliament, wherever, public policy decision. That should be made pretty much entirely in alignment with any super mandate. So on a lot of things we have ambivalence. Poor old Scottish independence is somewhat of an ambivalent subject. We haven't quite made up our mind. Whereas something like, should we have pensions, right, is something like at the 90%, you get it? So the 90% stuff is an absolute super mandate. You cannot go against it, like what Mr. Trump is literally doing right now in America. This is something that no one voted for. They're doing it to be absolutely, I don't know, Dickensian. It's horrendous. I do solemnly swear to faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States. That's the presidential one there. Pretty cool. Having oaths is kind of a legit thing, having an oath and swearing an oath. Corporate power. Corporations as a legal institution must be abolished. Now, this is the bit where I refer when I'm doing storytelling mode and I'm talking about movies and stories and whatnot for the Manchurian Candidate, having a bit of fun. I'm saying that we need to be hobbits and we need to take the ring to Mordor, right? Like the Tolkien book. Here you can see me talking about that. This is taking the ring to Mordor. We need to abolish the whole concept of corporate liabilities. And being able to function as a corporation is something that needs to be better regulated in such a manner I would describe as a bonfire of corporate law. The Nuremberg Principles, right? So if you're a scary boss of a big nasty corporation at the moment, you're worried about Mr. Luigi coming after you. Don't worry about me, I'm not quite like Luigi, although I have near identical backstories, Mr. Luigi. Poor old sore with the chronic pain, and then what the hell's going on here, and then the radicalism and whatnot. I'm not a radicalist, of course, I'm running as a candidate. You see, me, I would have a more democratized form of kind of principles. I would have a Nuremberg for the community, what I sometimes humorously call a Communiberg. But I mean, a Communiberg would be where we don't do that. I'm not death penalty pro, of course, but you know how I feel about this kind of vast injustice. We ought to be angry at times to know right from wrong, accurately and socially. I mean, we are experiencing such wrongness. Things are so out of order now. Corporate rule runs so much of our lives, and there's a great deal of human commodification, human harm, human suffering, human neglect. And it just, how on earth we're going to maintain peace in the world under these conditions, I do not know. So it's quite urgent and whatnot. Abolition of political parties. Yes, the White Collar Crime Bill. The White Collar Crime Bill is the main piece of legislation to make all this, come about, if you know what I mean. In other words, make it go from just being political banter of E&F done to being something that might get near law of the land and whatnot. Epoch Nova, New Age, is a flagship policy. So Epoch Nova, the contract basis of having New Age contracts with political candidates bonded in a kind of much more accountable, regulated way with their community is what Epoch Nova is all about. A contract to never ever join a party and be actively anti all parties forever. Parties, seeing political parties as nothing other than corruption, really. No parties ever, not after signing that deepest of promises not to assemble in such a way. It's just a kind of wrong thing to do, to join a party. Don't be a member of a political party. Try to run as an independent. This is what I suggest for a way forward. And there's solidarity to some good members of parties and whatnot, not to be like, blah, blah, hate you, blah, blah, whatever. No. It's just saying, look, you can see that it's folly, The Epoch Nova political era shall be an era of such peace and prosperity where our only suffering shall be the memory of past losses, tragedies we could have avoided, and the record of ill deeds by our primitive ancestors, the writers of this document, for example. I hope for future where my experiences are no longer experiences had by anyone, sincerely. In military matters, the Epoch Nova candidate signs to be observant of democratic will, neutrality, and peace above all. No military coup can ever be tolerated in the government by Epoch Nova candidate. No. To never mix public and private life, to guard my family and friends from assaults, etc. Yes, no one will ever get named. Nobody in my past life or my, before politics life would ever be named in public. I tell stories because that's fun, but no one will ever be named. And any identifiable stuff, please let me know and I'll pull it all down. The armed forces oath there, yep, legally under oath at all times. Telling lies while holding an elected position shall henceforth by this candidate be addressed by the law as perjury, lying under oath, not just lying to Parliament, but anywhere, anytime, in any way at all regarding matters of government. This contract shall in no way obstruct the political signatory from enjoying a normal private life. I mean, again, the armed forces do it. Lots of other areas of life, people have to have very high integrity. I would argue that integrity is somewhat not so great, 2025 and all the rest of it. But, who could blame them? From the top down, it's rotten, isn't it? The law of perjury is found in the Perjury Act 1911, which explains that perjury is when you have lawfully sworn as a witness or interpreter, judicial proceeding. Yeah, look, so making lying in politics like perjury. Making lying... If a candidate gets into politics, has promised us to do something, like Mr. Starmer and whatnot, what they've done, it's an outrage, isn't it? I mean, it really is an absolute outrage, what we're seeing at the moment. It's probably one of the worst bait-and-switch type things that we've ever seen go down, really, in public life. An absolute affront to public life has taken place. Many other things, such as Brexit, the Brexit era, the pandemic era, the resurrection, re-election of the dark side, Mr. Donald Trump, all of it led to what you're reading now, you know. This is the magistrate's oath here. This is quite a cool one, isn't it? So help me God, magistrate's first oath of allegiance. I swear that I will well and truly serve our sovereign Lord King Charles III. You see why I've had to put a great deal of mention of the royal family, the monarchy, to be monarchy tolerant with the oath. So Epoch Nova is monarchy tolerant, monarchy ambivalent, actually, and so that it is the highest power of the land to the Epoch Nova candidate, the New Age politician, is in fact the people. You'll see that the police, the army, and so on, it's mainly to the king and the queen and all that, right? Hippocratic oath, meanwhile, I'd like to add more of this in the future, you know, as we continue through the years. I'd like to get the phrase "to do no harm" included in there. I kind of forgot it on my first run. Where are we now? 2025. So Epoch Nova, I can kind of revise them annually and stuff like that, and just kind of review them. That's what being a constitutionalist is. Bring an amendment when you need one. The Hippocratic Oath is a kind of elevating thing that took place. You know, doctors were of a certain standard, and then they went up a standard, and that's what I want to do with politics. That's why I would compare it to that. I, Copper, Dodgy Copper, of Dodgy Copperville, do solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that I will well and truly serve the King in the office of Constable with fairness, integrity, diligence, and impartiality. Look, we've got a terrible state of affairs with justice. The justice system is utterly broken and in need of ransacking. Actually, what I want to do, the reason that the judicial oath is the first part of Epoch Nova, is to bring in a new higher standard of integrity back into public life, because of how absolutely lacking in standards our general justice system is and political system is at the moment. A zero standards environment. Any benign benefits or gifts received which arise from a media, creative revenue, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so we've got some worries about what am I going to do with my cash flow. For me as a candidate, it's quite straightforward at the moment. I just have to disclose what I'm doing. And of course, I've discovered about this 50 quid threshold since doing this work, that I can actually just keep my donations so small that tracking them just doesn't really become that big a deal. I think you're actually incredibly safe, and I think all my standards are going to be permanently met with meeting that threshold, never taking a big enough donation to even count as a donation for a start. What's this? The stock market. Ooh, the jellyfish about the stock market. Shareholders may provide investment. The problem is that how did they get that investment? Look, you know, there are major problems with the economy. I'm convinced the stock market and these kind of third-party scenarios where there's vested power in certain outcomes, is toxic, inherently toxic, and we need to look at really trying to reduce the financial markets as an actual feature of economy. Do you know what I mean? Employment is akin to slavery to me. You know, the most indoctrinated humans have gone from school direct to education, then to employment. These monkeys have never released a branch before they had a full grasp of the next one. It's quite a droll writer myself at times, you know. It's the on corruption document here, nonviolent resistance always. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. This is a cool bit. Forgive me. Was founded in October 1966 by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, who met at Merritt College in Oakland. Solidarity to the BLM movement, solidarity to all minorities, solidarity to everyone being targeted by toxic government power. Corporate power, government power stuck together, in my case, a thing. Beast-like problem that we have. Beautiful zebra there is rather out of place in this. Under the water. What's the zebra doing underwater? Don't know. Just sort of, I was just editing and I quite like that one. That's all right. Okay, dude. Okay. Listen, the hermit crab here... What's he up to? We want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our black community. We want full employment for our people. This is some cool stuff, you know, and how have we not fixed these problems, eh? How have we not fixed them? Right, well, I think there needs to be an elected political aspect to one's protest movement. Protest and activism, to all you protesters and activists, my solidarity. I'm not a member of your movement. No, I'm a candidate. I'm an independent candidate. But I really support protest, and I really support activism, and I hope to represent all campaign movements, really, if you think about it. We just need to oust these bad politicians. That should be everyone's unified protest to get politics cleaner. A white-collar crime bill. Get rid of poverty. Get rid of disease. Get rid of hunger. Get rid of these things that are here for profit. People are making money off this terrible outcomes. That's why the little devil guy is there, the white collar crime guy, these little devil wings. It's like that. It's bad. Medicine for profit. The whole spectre of that. When I was at the hotel, I was in and out of lots of meetings to overhear all sorts of horrendous strategies being concocted by mustache twirling CEOs and whatnot. Believe me, they're like this, these crab-like beasts, you know what I mean? And we need to really I love a free market, don't get me wrong. I'm a capitalist, and the pragmatism that I bring is the one where it's like social safety net. Also, a free market on top, nice and balanced, a nice middle of the road. Why? Because that's what democracy wants. It's what the people want. They want that. What are we on to? Sorry, faith schools, no-brainer. There can only be state-regulated schools. Look, the schools in America, it's a really tricky subject, the public schools, because they can't have their religion in there. And the Bible people do not like this. The Bible people want Bibles in schools. They want 10 Commandments on the wall. It's relentless. There has to be a robust constitution to protect people from these cult-like behaviors, these sort of toxic brainwashy activities. Of all faiths do them. All religions are guilty of it. There's always that kind of thing going on there. Childhood poverty is completely intolerable. Childhood poverty needs to be abolished. Childhood poverty being existent at all is what a failure we have as a state. This is political failure. Absolutely at the sharp end of it is kids being failed. Kids who are not our kids not being provided for, not being catered for, and growing up problematic and becoming problematic and growing up and becoming very, very bad people ultimately. It's inevitable. Humans are a cyclical problem always, we have to be humanistic in everything we do. The marketing to commodification in any way of children or childhood shall be abolished. It's just kind of some stuff about me talking about corruption. The things that I find stand out as just particularly outrageous leading up to producing a white-collar crime bill. We can be as expansive as we want. When in a new age of politics, anything is possible. It really is. Exploitation of kids. We've got kids going back to work in Florida at the moment. I don't know how it is when you're reading this, but things are going a horrible, horrible way. Consumerist educations, poison society. Consumerist educations. I refer you to the work of Noam Chomsky. You don't need me to repeat to you the great works of Noam Chomsky about what schools are doing to you. Also, I would add to that is that education that leads to higher education can often be like this now too, in ways that it never used to be. And also that conforming to an employment market, that catering to an employment job market, which is just guff, right? Which is just bringing out people going to employment that is guff. It's unimaginative, that's slave akin to slavery. Rather, to take us back to the Black Panther Party, what they were saying, they want to have full employment. I want full self-employment, right? That's quite radical, yeah? I want full self-employment with what I'm putting forward. Oh, right, so next to the last slide here, we've got the Needle's Eye Clause, punishment of swordfall. So this all got renamed and retitled and everything. So you can see I've done some redrafting and whatnot since the old 2023 version. I did a 2023 version, a 2024 version, and I've not done a new 2025 version. Maybe do that at the end of the year, whatever. But Epoch Nova should be there in front of you now. Epoch Nova, the first part, you can see politician's oath. The politician's oath, okay? Now, the sovereign oath will be Epoch Nova 2. That is when we figure out a way to get an even higher level of democratic power arranged for us in a way that is healthy for the community, that is non-toxic power, use of power to make our world a better place. What would we do with the monarchy? How would we repair this thing? How could we fix it and make it better and whatnot? I think about these things. I'll tell you, just to make this video, because it's been a somewhat rambling one, and I'm just getting as much content up on YouTube as I can at the moment. Forgive me for being a bit improv and whatnot. Let me tell you about Epoch Nova 2, just vaguely in my mind, what that would look like, what I would want to achieve in there. I would want to get us to a point, I sort of draw the logo as being lionesses, for it to be 3 lionesses, rather like the 3 lions on your shirt, the 3 lionesses. I find that quite a cool logo, a cool concept to use for this, because I think we need 3 sovereigns. Who? What?